Hey, hello, I'm Kråkan, also known as Scarecrow. Welcome to Closet Movie Rambles, where I talk about old movies that I found in my closet while cleaning. This week's movie is Terminator 3, Rise of the Machines. It's an action sci-fi from 2003. It's about 1 hour and 44 minutes long, starring Christina Loken, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Nick Stahl, and Claire Danes. And the movie starts about a bit after the second movie ended. In the second movie, the main characters destroy the last Terminators and preventing Judgment Day from ever happening. And by doing so, John is on the run, basically trying to stay off the grid, off society and all that, because if something happens or the Terminator will come back. The movie basically starts with him trying to find jobs and stuff, and him riding a motorcycle in the middle of the night, dodging a deer so he wouldn't crash into it, and he tumbles off his bike. And then we cut to the arrival of the TX, which is a new form of Terminator. She has a metal skeleton with liquid metal on top of it. And she arrives naked, of course, and she steals a car and a cell phone. She drives away. And she uses a cell phone to get the locations of other targets because of what I think is like John's lieutenants or something, or important person that will be important later in the war and the cause of things. But she rides too fast, and there's this cop that pulls her over, and she sees one of those billboards. This is like a model or something. It's like, is this sexy? And it's basically a picture of a lady with huge tits. And she kind of sees that and realizes that she can seduce the cop, and the cop always looks down at her, like, because of the dress and everything. And she says, "I like your gun." And the cop says, "What?" And it's kind of one of those funny lines because he's kind of distracted and all that. And she's like, funny, you know. And then we cut to one of the other two main characters, Kate and Scott. I think they're prepping for the wedding or something. And Kate's father calls Robert. And he says that he can't make it because of his job, but he can't really tell what he's working with because it's a secret, military secrets. And he promised he will somehow be there. And then cutting to his workplace where he works, and this virus, or when TX dialed up her phone, a virus infected the whole civil network and part of the military network. So Robert is kind of the responsible man for the AI of Skynet, which basically will turn rogue in. They talk about it in the second movie, but anyway, they in this case, Skynet is a security systems that basically it's kind of the main point of it. And his employee says, "We use Skynet to hunt this virus down," and Robert kind of says, "No, it's not the time yet, and it may be later, but not now," or something like that. And then cutting to the arrival of the other Terminator, which is played by Arnold Schwarzenegger, and him arriving in the desert. And then cutting back to John, breaking into a vet store, a vet clinic, to get some pills for his pain because of the crash and everything. And then this is kind of one of the more funny scenes. The Terminator walks to the desert, and he comes up on a bar, and he's naked, and he just goes straight into the bar, and the bouncer kind of says, "No, you can't go in, you go in here, you go in the back." But the Terminator doesn't listen, he just goes right into the bar. And then he looks around just like the second movie, trying to acquire clothes. And then he looks around and he sees that it's ladies' night, so the whole bar is full of women, and of course he's naked, and he just goes in and he gets oogled by all the women, and he goes up to the stage where there's a male stripper. He looks him up and down, and he realizes that he has the same size of, basically his size, and he says, "I need your clothes," And the stripper kind of says, you know, like, wait your turn, let me do my job or something like that. And then he goes up on stage, you know, and the ladies in the crowd kind of go woo, you know, because of Naked Arnold, you know. And then the other stripper says, like, get down, you're stealing my spotlight or something. Talk to the hand, and, you know, like, talk to the hand. And Arnold kind of grabs the hand, like, I need your clothes or something like that. It's kind of like one of those funny moments because of literally telling him what to do and then doing it because he's a machine. And then you cut to Arnold's Terminator leaving, going outside, and he puts on these ugly kind of glasses which is like star shaped, and because of his serious face, you kind of like, okay, are you gonna wear them? Takes them off, kind of throws them away, steps on them, and then he hotwires a car, and he finds this other cooler glasses that he puts on the dashboard. And then we cut to the other Terminator, the TX Terminator, going through her list of potential threats in the future war. So she goes to a drive-through and kills off a kid that works there, and then she goes to a party and she kills off another kid and his sister or something because they will be important later. And then Kate's character gets a call in the middle of the night. There's been a break-in at the vet clinic, and she goes there to check. And she has her phone with her, and she goes by and looks, and she finds these empty pill bottles. And then she finds John there, and she is about to call for the cops or something, and he kind of threatens her with a gun, and he says, I don't want any trouble or anything, I just need some pills, and because of his pain. She looks at him and says, how many of these pills did you eat? How many did you take? And he kind of like looks at her confused and dazed, and she said, we use these to chemically neuter dogs. Hey, look at this. And she throws the pill bottle at him, confusing him, takes his gun and shoots him, and puts him into a cage. But basically it's not a real gun, it's just a paintball gun. And she said, next time you threaten someone, use a real gun, or something like that. And then there's someone at the door, so Kate goes to check, and it's one of her customers. It's an old lady with a dog, and Kate basically tells her to sit down in the waiting room and just wait there. And she goes back to see John, and then she realizes that she recognizes him before, that she knows him, and she said, what happened to you, John? And he basically starts to tell her. But there's a break-in, there's some shattering glass, and Kate goes to check what's happening, and she just walks out the door and she sees the TX Terminatrix basically shooting down the old lady, and she runs back to hide. And the TX has this hit list, and Katie is on the list because of herself and her father. And the TX kind of samples the old woman's blood, tasted it with the finger with the tongue and thing. She analyzed the DNA, so it's not Cathy Brewster. And she goes to look for her. And John breaks out of his cage, and the TX finds one of all John's old bloody patches, which he used to clean up his wound with after the bike accident. And she tasted it and realized that John is there. And then Katie makes a run for a car. She tries to start it, but she's panicking, can't start it, and the TX kind of rips her out of the car, and she asks, like, where is John? Where is John? Show me. And then Arnold's Terminator comes in with a pickup truck on the road, kind of bouncing and kind of clipping the TX into the wall, and there is an explosion, and Katie is unscathed. And then Arnold walks up, and there's like fire, flames, and he's like, where is John? And he puts her into a van, and he's about to lock it up, and she said, okay, if I tell you where John is, would you let me go? And he said, of course, yes. Okay, he's in the kennel, he's in one of the cages. and then he said, and then he kind of locks the door and says, "I lied," in one of his Austrian accents, which is kind of funny. And then the TX is about to wake up. Her hand kind of comes up out of the rubble, and John escapes his cage, and he gets confronted by Arnold's Terminator, and he's kind of shocked because he doesn't really know if this is a good or a bad Terminator at this point. So he just asks straight out, "Are you here to kill me or what?" "No, John Connor must live." And they run out to the car, and TX comes out of the rubble, and it basically is about to attack him, and Arnold's Terminator says to John, "Just take the van and go." And the TX kind of just shoots Arnold in the chest with this pulse rifle thing, and he just goes flying into the mechanical shop. And then they drive off. And then the cops arrive, and they basically ambulance and the cops, and they try to lift Arnold or the Terminator up, but he's too heavy because he's a heavy machine. And meanwhile, while this is happening, the Terminatrix, the TX, is stealing and remote controlling like the cars, because she can control other technologies somehow by remote, by just touching them. She steals this cop car and this truck with a crane, and then they drive off. And John, during this, John's car, he basically hits. He realized that Kate is in the back of the truck, and Kate is also trying to call for help, but due to the virus that the TX has planted in the system, she can't get a clean line. And John kind of hits another pedestrian car, another pedestrian in a car, and they kind of get out and argue, and the TX kind of get on their trail, and Arnold wakes up, and he steals a motorcycle and goes after him. So there's basically this car chase, and there is some flipping of cars and cool effects, and Arnold kind of hangs on the crane, gets up from his motorbike, and he kind of stops the TX's car by just going right into it, and then actually jumping back into the other van which John is driving it to just take the wheels. It's kind of a cool action scene. I can't even make it justice by talking about it, but you have to see it, I guess, because it's one of the cool effects, practical CG, kind of nice blend. And then as the Terminator is driving the car, he kind of checks on Kate. Are you okay back there? Like, this is one of those slide things, because it's a vet car. And she said, "Drop dead, asshole." And he kind of just shouts and he says, like, "Unable to comply," or "I am unable to comply." And then the Terminator drives them starts to drive them to a safe location. But there's some smoke coming out of the Terminator's chest. And he asks John for a cutting tool, and he cuts up his skin in his chest, and he removes one of the broken fuel cells. He got damaged with the fight with the TX. And he basically explains that she's more or less indestructible, and that's really bad and he also explained that he's an obsolete model at this point. He's the 101, and the TX is kind of more advanced, and he explains about that. And he throws out the broken fuel cell out of the window, and he explains when they get unstable, they rupture. So it basically hits the ground and it explodes like a small atomic cloud, and it ruptures everything, and the car kind of staggers a bit and drives on, and Kate in the back is kind of freaking out, and the Terminator just says, "Relax." And then they stop for refuel, and the Terminator just goes into the shop, and he has this bag, and he puts everything, goes from shelf to shelf, just picking down stuff, and the accountant just looks at him, and then he's about to leave, and then the accountant says like, "Hey, are you gonna pay for that?" And Terminator just goes straight up to him and just talk to the hand. It's just so funny, these kind of things. Maybe it's just funny because it's Arnold saying him. I can't think of anyone else playing the Terminator but him, and that's just true facts. And then the Terminator kind of opens up the back of the truck, and Kate tries to escape, but the Terminator kind of forces her back in, and she screams for help, and the Terminator says this is not helping the mission, and the gas attendant kind of calls the cops, and then John kind of goes in the back with Kate, try to calm her, and they drive away, and the TX, cutting to the TX, killing off Kate's boyfriend in the apartment, killing off Scott. And a little while later, there's a knocking on the door, and the TX has the shape-shifting ability like the T-1000 from the second movie. So she shape-shift into to Scott, basically, and the LAP kind of said there's been possibly been a kidnapping. There was some gas attendant calling in or something like that, and he or the TX kind of says, "I'll help you find her." And meanwhile, this is happening. The Terminator takes Kate and John to Sarah's mausoleum or burying place, because in this universe, in this timeline, Sarah died, and they basically drive up, and the Terminator kind of explained that she was buried here, or with her will or something, and he kind of punches the coffin, and then John kind of goes crazy about it, and then the Terminator pulls it up, and it's full of guns. So basically, the Terminator starts looking through the guns, and John explains to Kate that his mom died of leukemia, but she held on for 3 more years just to make sure that Judgment Day wouldn't happen and everything. And then Kate takes a gun and pulls it on the Terminator and threatens him. And the Terminator says, "I wouldn't do that if I were you," or something like that. And then she shoots the Terminator in the mouth, and Arnold kind of goes and like spits it out, and he says, "Don't do that." It's kind of a funny scene anyway. And some gas grenades or canisters are lobbed in through the windows, because at this point the SWAT team or the police knows where they are, and the Kate kind of used the confusion to escape, and then Kate runs out, and John argues with the Terminator that he might not even be the one, that he's tired of this bullshit, and the Terminator kind of puts a strangling grip on him and pushing him up against the wall or something like that, and he says like, "You're right, you're worthless, you're not worth my time." And then John flips and kind of calls him a stupid machine and everything, and then the Terminator just lets him go and says, "Anger is that's better. You just fucking with me?" And he says, "Yes, basic psychology is also among my subroutines. So anger is more useful than despair." And then cut to the TX, hearing on the police radio while riding with these LAPD guys that they know the location of Catherine or Kate. So he kills them off and he drives over to the location. And then cutting to Kate outside by an ambulance getting oxygen. And this is also a funny scene. In the second movie, there was this psychologist that kind of was a ward of Sarah Connor, and he's basically there to comfort her, because now he's a state psychologist or something like that, and they talk about the the Terminator, like, and Kate says he's not human. And he says, "I know it's okay, and it takes time to kind of get rid of these things and kind of cope with it. It takes years, because he was part of that experience. It takes a lot of time. You would never get over it." And then the Terminator kind of comes out with the coffin over his shoulder like this, and a big rail gun, and he flips. He kind of turns. And the psychologist sees him. Oh shit! And he just runs off. He's like, "Fuck this! I'm out of this!" And he just runs away. And the Terminator kind of open fires, and then just the police take cover, and there is no casualties. and the Terminator kind of thrusts the coffin into a hearse. A car. It's like a long car, like it's a hearse. And then he jumps in, and the cops start fire upon him. And then John asks the Terminator, "Why is Kate so important? Why is she so important? What can be more important than me? I'm the savior of mankind." "Well, she is your wife, John." And then John kind of goes, "What?" And then the Terminator backs out, and he kind of falls back into the coffin again. And then cutting to Kate running for her boyfriend, or what she assumes is her boyfriend. She ran from the whole thing. But in the midst of it, she realized that this is not Scott, it's actually the TX shapeshifted. And then the TX turns into this other female form that it had before. And then John and the Terminator kind of drives up, and the Terminator fires this RPG, kind of momentarily just disable the TX, and I think John fires upon her as well. And then John says, "Just if you want to live, just get in the car," and she runs for the car. And then the TX catches up with them and jumps up on the car's roof, and she saws it up with her hand or something, and John fires at her, but to no avail. And then Arnold drives under a truck and pushing her off, and then drive away. And then they need to look for another vehicle because this one is broken into pieces. So they find this motorhome, and the Terminator try to fix it up. And at this time they're supposed to go to this safe place because Judgment Day couldn't be prevented. The Terminator tells them this, that they couldn't be prevented, so they need to be far away from the blast zone that they will survive. And there is this one safe place, so if they leave now, they just might make it. And then the Terminator tells them about TX's hit list, and then Kay realized that her father is also on the hit list. And John tries to order the Terminator to go back for Kate's father, but the Terminator refuses, and he's not obeying the orders. And then John puts a gun to his own head and then tries to convince the Terminator, but the Terminator he doesn't believe him. And then Kate says, "Please save my father." And then the Terminator says, "Yes, if we leave now, we would be at Skynet at this moment." And then they leave for that. So she realized that she is actually the one able to give the Terminator orders, because this is also a little bit confusing, but I wrote it down. The Terminator was sent back by Kate in the future because John was dead. And John was dead because the Terminator that she sent back before she programmed him killed John. Some weird reason for that. But they go back to Skynet. And then at that place, the TX is already there looking for Robert. And she kind of activates these the first prototypes of Terminators, which are basically like machine guns on wheels with some intelligence, and she activates them. And meanwhile this is happening, Robert is activating the Skynet defense system to take care of the virus. But of course it goes south, and everything makes the connection and everything, and then it shuts down, and then it restarts, and then all hell breaks loose, because now Skynet is self-aware and it's about to turn on the humans. So there's some shootouts, and the Terminators prototypes just start firing at the personnel, and there's this hover, I think they're called hunter killers, smaller versions flying around, and it's a crazy scene. And while this is happening, the TX goes into the main control room where Robert is, and she is disguised as Kate, and of course Robert thinks that it's Kate, and the TX kind of fires on Robert and shoots him, hits him in the chest, and the Terminator and the real Kate and John arrives, and John fires upon her the TX that is. So she falls down a shaft, and of course Arnold says she will be back, which is one of those famous lines, "I'll be back, she will be back." Meh. But Robert says there's one way they can shut down Skynet, but there's some files in his office. So they go to the office and they open this safe, and there's a folder there's blue folders with numbers and red folders with numbers and all that. And Robert explains to his daughter Kate that, remember when we practiced with the planes and flying all that stuff, there's a plane in the hangar or something like that. And then try to leave, and then Robert dies because of the gunshot wounds. And the war has already been started, so this chaos has assumed the machines are taking over. And as I said, when they try to leave, the TX intervenes, and Arnold's Terminator just says to them, "Just go, I'll handle this," or at least, buy you some time. And then they start to fight. And John and Kate runs away. But of course the TX kind of makes short work of Arnold's Terminator, and she kind of snaps his head or neck, so it's just hanging by the wires. She actually kicks it off a bit, and then she hacks the Terminator, Arnold's Terminator, and then she goes after them. And John kind of makes a distraction. There's this like particle accelerator kind of thing, like a magnetic train or something. He turns it on just to distract her for a bit, and they start to run, and there's this like long corridor kind of that curves, and they run, and then the magnetic field kind of kicks in, and the TX gets stuck to the wall of it, kind of trapping it there for the moment, not killing, but trapping it there. And then Kate and John goes to the hangar, and they start a flight check, and they remove actually back out the plane. And then Arnold's Terminator arrives. He's basically just put his head back and he's going, but he's not himself. The TX program virus has affected him and his circuit, so he's not himself. And he puts John against the car, and he's not supposed to kill John Connor because that will leave him without a purpose. But the virus program is like taking over and forward and backwards, so John reminds him of his prime directive, his duties, and that without him he will be useless. So the Terminator kind of throws John away and destroys the car that he was lying on, and the Terminator kind of reboots and restart. And then basically what happens is John and Kate goes to Crystal Peak, because that was the location in which her father told them to go with this folder, this safe place, or this one place they can shut Skynet down. And they go there and they land, and there's basically an abandoned military hangar, and there's a console, and there says like red 47, and they realize that 47 red opened that kind of folder and like putting codes and stuff, and it start to open door and turning electricity on. And then a chopper crash into the blast shielding doors, and it's the TX arriving, and there's this she basically goes for him, but then Arnold's Terminator kind of crash in with a bigger helicopter thing on top of it, and they start fighting, and they start to like there's this fight between the both of the machines, and basically the TX is stuck underneath the helicopter rubble, and the door is about to close on them, so the Arnold's Terminator kind of puts himself between the blast door and the floor. He has to hold it up and tells him to just go, and the TX kind of rips off his own legs and goes for John and grabs his leg, and then they kind of, John and Kate trying to escape, crawls through, and Arnold's Terminator kind of pulls the TX back and takes his one last ruptured energy cell and just push it into her mouth, and he kind of says, "Now you're Terminator," or something stupid like that, and then there is explosion, and Kate and John goes down, via elevator down to this supposedly one place they can shut Skynet down. They have detonators set to go, and then they realize that when actually arriving there, there's this old technology. There's this basic VIP shelters for those who didn't make it, and he realized, and he gets angry and upset about this, that the Terminator lied to him. The only mission that the Terminator had was to keep both Kate and John safe, and that's what he did. And he turned off the... John kind of smashed a monitor, and he gets very upset and angry. And then people start to call in on these old comms, because these communication devices actually predates the new technology. It's because of software. Basically, they don't run on software, so they are unaffected by the machine virus and everything. So all these kind of military personnel starts to call in and asking for who is in charge. And John kind of holds Kate's hand, and he says, "This is John at Crystal Peak. And who's in charge over there? Who's in charge?" "I am." "Okay, John." And then they start to talk about it. And there is this last scene is kind of one of those silent narrated scenes where I think it's really good. You can see the countryside of America, like all these silos and those classic kind of farmhouse, and you see these missile nukes get fired up and basically just plummeting down in these mushroom clouds. It's all silent. It tells the story, and then John narrates like this is how the war began and everything, and that when the machine struck and all that. This is a really good scene, and then the movie ends. And I think this is a really good movie, actually. Good special effects, but there's also this thing when it comes down to Terminator movies, like there are lots of one-liners, lots of cheese, but I mean, it's really good for what it is. It's an action movie. It's a science fiction movie. It's one of those classics. So could I recommend this movie? Absolutely. If it's on TV, just go watch it. Can't go wrong. Yeah. But if you like this, that's good for you. I don't know. So anyway, hope I see you again. Take care. See you later.